All right, people slowly joining the conversation. Good morning. This is Bastian from Waved. Suggest we give it a couple more, maybe 2 or 3 minutes before I kick off. I'm super stoked to be here, to be sharing a bit of an experience about what we do here in Panama through surfing and for the sake of better education. Would be great if the ones who are in the chat could let me know whether you've already surfed before, and maybe where you're from which country, as a comment. Kathy, thank you so much. Welcome. Time to come to Panama and surf your wave, surf for the education. All right, let's get started. It's 8:33 here in Panama, still in the morning. So welcome everyone to this Wednesday webinar. And thanks again, HundrED, so much for having us here, for giving us the chance to talk a bit about what we do. So basically, Wave Foundation was founded actually in Brazil. I'm German myself, but I've moved out of Germany when I was 18, always with the objective to also help give back to education as of secondary school, giving English classes to kids. Then spent some time in France, also working with kids. And basically always somehow involved in education, but never with the objective to one day to be a professor or a teacher at a university. I basically just did it because I really had fun doing it. And then, yeah, ended up, after my studies in Switzerland, I have a hospitality and marketing background, ended up in the corporate world. And I'd say that obviously I've gained some amazing experience within 5 years that I spent in companies, but it never really fulfilled me as a person. And I've sort of like also missed the fact of giving back, this feeling of fulfilling me personally with what we were doing. After I was living in London at that time, and a friend of mine has told me, hey, come to Brazil. I'm pretty sure you're gonna like it, and I went there, went to Florianopolis to talk a bit about basically to go on a vacation, and fell in love with the country. And after 6 months, ended up in Brazil, and it's also in Brazil where I started to surf. So I'm not a natural born surfer. I've been surfing for three years only, and in Brazil, while surfing, I really found surfing to be the sport which gives back. The people who would always find ways to donate. I'm pretty sure you know there's a bunch of surfing foundations who give back through beach cleanings, etc. But me having this background of education and always this interest of how a surfer could give back to education and actively help a student at a primary or secondary school. I wanted to combine these two passions of surfing and education. And probably through surfing, one day I had this idea: why not assume that for each wave that someone would catch, just anyone, a sponsor, for example, could chip in $1 for that surfed wave, and that surfed wave would then turn into $1, and that dollar would go to a cause, to a project that could help education. So basically, Waved has turned into, let's say, the first surfing foundation that gives back to scholastic education through an extreme sport such as surfing. through this concept of $1 per wave for local schools. So before going maybe into a couple of like case studies on how WEB works, I want to show you how we actually run the fundraising model. So I have a little digital four-digit clock here that you can see. And this is basically the 4-digit clock that we use in order to count waves. So we run surfing events with WEB here, especially for the moment in Panama on beaches. And what we do is we animate people to participate. Anyone can come, surfers, just the general public as well. We always obviously take a couple of schools that WEB supports here in Panama. So far it's 5 primary schools. We're benefiting around 250 kids. And we run surfing events, and they're called $1 per wave surfing events. And what we basically do is we have this this wave counter on the beach, which comes with a little remote, and it has buttons that say up and down. And all it takes is a volunteer to be on the beach and to look exactly at the waves that the people have been surfing. So each time someone would surf a wave, you would then, first wave, then someone else would surf again, would take another wave, and this is how slowly this counter goes up. So these are waves basically that people are surfing at the event that directly impact education. Because we always work together with sponsors, and these sponsors would make sure that the effort that people are bringing to the beach into the importance of education are being paid for. So at events, you might end up with 600 waves that we surfed, for example, last Sunday through an activity where we had a professional surfer from Brazil to visit us here in Panama. And within 2 hours, we surfed 600 waves. So that ends up being $600 for education that we can use as a foundation to benefit the schools that we support here. We've also run events last year where we fundraised around 2,500 waves. So that's $2,500. So imagine what you can do with that amount of money just to help education here in Panama. And to give you an idea a bit more about how WEB works and how it helps, it runs on a 4-pillar program. The first thing how WEB supports education is through infrastructure improvements here at the schools. This is where we invest basically most of the waves that people have been surfed for. And this is together with the help of the Ministry of Education here in Panama. So they basically give us the authorization to go into schools. They would come in at the beginning to check the status how it is before, and they would come in at the end to see whether the work that we've run has been done or has been completed successfully. There's no funds that they manage. The only thing that they really give us is the authorization. The project management from A to Z is managed by WEB itself. The second thing that we do is we provide also English classes for the kids. So important for you guys to know, and it's a bit of an unusual school model, but here in Panama, especially in the rural areas, and this is also where we're based, you find lots of schools that have 15 to 20 students. It's all primary, so it's kids between 5 and 12, and they have one teacher. So that one teacher, he's supposed to teach pretty much everything from Monday to Friday to these kids. And so this is very often also the only teacher that these kids would see throughout their entire primary school life. So it's a very sad reality. I think there's still lots of work missing on telling people about it. So one thing that these kids are missing are English classes. And this is where we come in with volunteers to teach them English so far on a weekly basis. But obviously this is something that we, through a curriculum, want to extend in the future. The third part that we do, obviously, and that's the coolest thing about WEB, this is the swim and surf program. So that's swimming classes and surf lessons for the kids. We take them out to the beach, they get their first experience surfing, And besides the physical activity, obviously, they also get to see their country. They get to travel to beaches that are so close to their homes and yet so far. And the fourth part is nutrition. So by nutrition, I mean, so far we provide schools with drinking water. And this is also something that we've seen throughout our experience for the past 2 years, is that a lot of kids here in Panama, they don't drink water. First of all, very often at the schools, what you will find is that there's water missing. And on the other hand, also, water for most of the kids is tasteless. So this is also why they don't like to drink it. But with the help of one national water brand, we have now provided water dispensers to 4 of the schools that we support. And another cool thing about this project also is that we're avoiding plastic, the use of plastic for these kids to drink water. And what we use instead is something called a totuma. This is the totuma. It's basically made out of a calabash tree. It's the fruit. You basically just chop off the top, take out the fruit from the inside, polish it a bit, and this is what the kids use to drink water. So each of the kids got their own totuma, personalized totuma with paintings, etc., which they now use. And this also makes it attractive for them to drink water. And we're avoiding plastic. So I think there's a couple of things, cool stories to tell. Those are the 4 pillars on how we support. And now I'd just like to quickly go a bit into maybe the Agenda 2030, explain to you how we work with the 17 SDGs and come up with the two business cases. So Agenda 2030, for us, it works as an international guideline. So whenever people would ask us, like, why are we working, for example, in English classes, you could say, well, because there's also, obviously there's the need on the one side, but on the other hand, also there's an objective that talks about quality education out of those 17, which I believe is number 3. So I think besides, so you have the fact of being an international guideline, which makes it so more relevant also for people to give you credibility to the work you do. All of what we do can be justified. So people won't be asking you anymore why you're supporting with this or why you're supporting with that. Plus, it also shows that you are, as a foundation or as an organization, as you might find in your own work, that you're having an international focus as well. Plus, if you can do something which relates to an objective in Panama, this might also be relevant to another country. Objective number 17, this is the last but probably the most important, talks about creating alliances to achieve the objectives, right? So this is basically our stronghold of WEB, is that we work especially with the private sector in order to support education. And this is why I wanted to maybe mention one business case. So not so much talking of storytelling. I think in the case of WEB, it's more the fact of social storytelling. Social storytelling meaning that we're always trying to look at the need and then see how this might be a good fit for a company to join us. The last example of how WEB achieved to got a sponsor on board that supports us is through a travel agency. It's a German travel agency, and this travel agency is going to support WEB simply through making each tourist that comes from Germany, Switzerland, and Austria travel to Panama donate $3 to WEB. So through this social story, let's say, the tourists, they don't only come to Panama to visit the country, but they're also coming to Panama to support education through a simple donation of $3, which doesn't make a big difference to anyone, spending I don't know how many thousands throughout his trip here in Panama while visiting the country. So this allows us to also get in touch with these tourists, tell them about WAVED, and potentially even bring them to the schools so that they can also see where those $3 are going. And it gives us the chance to further expand the story and tell people about how WAVED comes up with different ideas to integrate the private sector into the nonprofit the nonprofit sector. This is one example. Another example is copper tone. Copper tone is a sun protector, a sunblock that you might know from Bayer, a German company, and they're supporting us with sunblock, sun protection. So this again is another. It's first of all, it's one objective out of the 17, which is salud y bienestar. So through the sunblock, they're protecting the children's, our students' health, but they also have an image which connects to surfing, because they're already into surfing abroad, and this is just something that they needed here in Panama, the connection between the surfing that was already existed and education. So for them, it's business, but it's also supporting the social cause. So I think just in general, what is really important when you go out and you reach out to companies is that you're always coming up with a cool story to tell. You have to come up with something that has not been seen yet. The problem with foundations, especially here in Panama, is that there's a very negative image to foundations in general. And because there's so many foundations already on the market, it gets boring. It gets boring for people to support. Everyone wants to help children, and a bunch of foundations that are already doing it, but I think really making a difference with WAVED is that we can manage to connect a boring subject such as education to an extreme sport such as surfing, right? So through this connection, you're making education not appealing for the students, because they know that besides studying at the school, they'll also be enjoying a surfing class, but it also makes it interesting for the companies to join, especially if it's companies that already have something in common with sports in general. This is really how we drive it, and obviously a lot through media work. So companies would support WAVED because we give them something in return, which very often is related to media coverage, let it be radio or TV. Obviously, the bigger you become, the more demanding also the companies get in terms of asking back for media coverage. But overall, I mean, it's been a great, it's been an amazing experience so far. There's lots of growth. There's always things that are unexpectedly happening. It's really tough to plan ahead. But I think just in general now for us, it's we're in phase 1, and it's about stepping up to phase 2, which is especially coming up with something with facilitating the logistic of the $1 per wave concept, make it accessible for more people, not just for participants of our events. So we're looking at scaling this concept. I know that lots of you have lots of experience outside in the educational world. For me right now, it's the first time that I'm actually reaching out to a platform which focuses on education. Usually it's pitching WAVED to the private sector and to the government in Panama, or to friends and other companies. So I'm really blessed to be part of this platform. I hope there's more coming up with HundrED, and I really encourage you also to get in touch with WAVED. I'd be very interested to hear about the work that you guys are doing. And let me know if you have any suggestions, any brainstorming that can be done of how things maybe could be managed differently, and how impact could be widened, let's say. And if you're interested in running a $1 per wave event in your country, we're also up for that. So really wanted to thank you all for your attention. 24 minutes roughly that I've talked about WAVED and how we function, how we work. And once more, thank you so much. And any comments? I'll be online for another minute to listen in what you have to say. Thank you so much, and aloha from Panama. Hope to welcome you here in our country. If you've never been, it's definitely worth coming and enjoying some waves. Thank you.